Flip it to Bubba Show. You like that? Yeah, let's give Sugar Child Robinson a hand. Talented young brother, grew up in Detroit, started playing music at started listening and playing music by ear at the age of 2. You know what I'm saying? And phenomenal. Then graduated school when he was 15. A genius, absolute genius. And none of his parents were musicians. Crazy. That's amazing. Listen, clap it up for today's class. This is the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969. And under commanding General Yohana, we have been raising Black, Hispanic, and Native American men to take back their identity, to give meaning back to our people, to help parents, mothers, children learn who they really are according to the Bible. And today is the ISUPK history class here in New York headquarters. I am Priest and Officer of 5000 Ashar Gapan. Joining me on Shamar and on the computer is Priest and Officer of 50 Aishaya Allah. We got Brother T in the building. We got Sister Shatar Banaf. So, sis, what's your Hebrew name again? Ra'aya. What does that mean?
That means to wait on the Lord.
To wait on the Lord. That's a beautiful name. Oh, we got Sister Ra'aya here in the building. We also got a new brother, Brother B in the building. What's going on, brother? How you doing? Well, good to have you here with us. And today we're going to be discussing history, of course, but specifically the Great Migration, right? Does anyone know what the Great Migration was? Sis?
It was where the people from the north went in their large group down to the south.
No, it's the opposite.
They went from the south to the north.
Yes, it's when over 6 million so-called African Americans, Negroes, fled the South in hopes of a better life, better occupation, way of living, and went all the way up to the north and even out to the west. All right. So what we're going to get into today is we're going to, as we do, always have some type of visual to help us learn and grasp this information better, since everyone learns in different ways. Yeah, you done signing that? Okay, perfect. Usually right there. Okay, brother. People learn all different types of ways, right? Some people are oral, some people are visual, some people are more audio, some people like to do hands-on. So here we try to do a combination of both. That way everyone can get the best type of retention of the material as possible. because this is things that we aren't taught in school. I know for myself, I wasn't taught about the Great Migration, the Great Black Exodus, if you want to call it, from south of the United States all the way up to the north and northwest. This is stuff we had to learn outside of the public school educational system here in the United States. Okay, so why don't we just jump right into it? We got the other video queued up, please. And to everyone that's in the chat, shalom, shabbatah to the brothers, shalom, Yahashua to the sisters. It's good to see all y'all here in the class today. All right.
True strivings of the freeman's sons is the travel of souls, whose burden is almost among the measure of their strength, and who is buried in this name of an historic race, in the name of the land of their fathers' fathers, in the name of human opportunity. W.E.B. Du Bois, the souls of Black folks. Welcome to One Mic, a Black History podcast. I'm your host, Country Boy, and this episode is about the Great Migration.
Well,
the Great Migration is...
So I want to give Country Mike. He does a lot of great podcasts and videos that are all historical based. He's also a brother. So if you ever get a chance, for anyone that's watching this class today, go and check out Country Mike. I believe the YouTube channel is One Mic Country. Like, can we just verify that? It is One Mic History on YouTube, right? He does a great job in going back and giving us a lot of explanation on historical events surrounding African Americans here in the United States. So shout out to Country Mike. He's a brother that does great work in being able to give us information, historical information. All right, please continue.
It's an exodus out of the Jim Crow South for African Americans to the industrialized North. As always, you like this, you enjoy this.
Now he said Jim Crow South, right? If we can go to the article, I think it's the history link I put up there. Scroll up. Scroll down a little more. Jim Crow. Let's learn about what Jim Crow was. If you can click on Jim Crow, and then we can share this screen. Okay, we'll learn about it. You can read from there. Okay.
Jim Crow laws were a collection of state and local statutes that legalized racial segregation.
So, based in the South, right after the emancipation of the slaves, the so-called the freeing of the slaves, society in the southern states of America and the United States created laws and legislation and got them passed that prohibited African Americans and people of color from taking part in certain things like voting or reading or going to school. So these laws were put in place to further hinder us from achieving, quote unquote, the freedom that we were guaranteed to have after Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Keep reading.
Named after a Black minstrel show character, the laws, which existed for about 100 years, from the post-Civil War era until 1968.
So Black minstrel shows, I don't know if anyone ever seen Officer Karab from Long Island. He did a great class a few Sundays ago for Long Island where it talked about minstrel shows where white people would dress in blackface, paint themselves black with red exaggerated on their lips to be big Black people lips. You know, they portrayed Black people in a very inhumane and exaggerated form, often trying to dehumanize us and criminalize us. And what's the other word I'm looking for? Dehumanize, criminalize, and subjugate stereotypes that will always forever be associated with us, like liking watermelon or liking fried chicken. These are types of things that they portrayed in blackface of our people doing. Okay, please continue.
Were meant to marginalize African Americans by denying them the right to vote, hold jobs, get an education, or other opportunities. Those who attempted to defy Jim Crow laws often faced arrest, fines, jail sentences, violence, and death.
Yes. So if you, yes, sister.
I just wanted to ask, how come when the blacks got free, they didn't start a mutiny with the ruling class so that they can get the jobs and the homes and all that kind of stuff?
Well, in order to have some type of revolt, you need power. And coming from being newly freed slaves, you don't have power. You don't have an army. You don't have a military. You don't have a a governing body. And in these particular times in the South, many of the slaves did not even know that they were actually freed. If you look up the history of what Juneteenth was, I forgot where in Texas, what city it was in Texas, or town in Texas, where the army, the American army from the North, actually had to go down to the South and help liberate some of our ancestors down there because they thought that they were still slaves. All right, please continue.
The roots of Jim Crow laws begin as early as
Hi,
1865.
I'm Uhuru Williams. I'm a
Immediately
historian,
following-
and here's what you need to know.
You gotta mute him. Oh, there you go.
Immediately following the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the United States, Black codes were strict local and state laws that detailed when, where, and how formerly enslaved people could work and for how much compensation.
So they created these laws that greatly and severely limited us, almost to the extent that we were still slaves, right? If we're free, our master no longer owns us. So where are we going to sleep? If we are no longer slaves and free, where are we working? How are we going to get the means to eat, to sleep, to survive, to support our children? These laws and these black codes that were created by our oppressor were strategically done to keep us in not only in a mental captivity, but still kept us enslaved to the areas that we were around. Okay, you want to say something?
Yeah, how did the black colleges, the banks, the neighborhoods, and all that come about?
That happened once we started to migrate. And today's class is the Great Migration. Sister in the back? Yes, that a Black Wall Street would be an example of a town that grew in wealth and in prominence because Black people and Native American people, they came together and formed their own communities where we were our own doctors, we were our own teachers, we created our own schools and universities. We had our own supermarkets, our own movie theaters and dentist office. We created a society in this oppressive country where we were able to support and rely on each other. And that is why brotherhood and sisterhood is extremely important, because without us showing love to one another, we can never exceed to the levels that our ancestors did back then. All right? Keep going, please. Hold on, sis.
The codes appeared throughout the South as a legal way to put Black citizens into indentured servitude.
And what?
Into indentured servitude.
And that's going to lead into the whole concept of sharecropping, which we will also get into. Keep going.
To take voting rights away, to control where they lived and how they traveled, and to seize children for labor purposes.
Crazy, right? Keep going.
The legal system was stacked against Black citizens, with former Confederate soldiers working as police and judges, making it difficult for African Americans to win court cases and ensuring they were subject to Black codes. These codes worked in conjunction with labor camps for the incarcerated, where prisoners were treated as enslaved people. Black offenders typically received longer sentences than their white equals, and because of the grueling work, often did not live out their entire sentence.
Okay, you can stop. We can go back to the previous article. So these laws, these codes that were created, really they were created to just keep us in some way, in form, and fashion as slaves in the South. Okay? Keep going with the article.
You said the previous article?
Yeah. Yes, hold on. Go back. Scroll up. Hit the back button. Perfect. Just right there. Okay. Right. Boom. Okay. You can go back to the video. I just want to make sure we have that saved. All right. Please continue.
Please consider donating to our Patreon page and review us on Apple Podcasts. Also, listen to the Cut Podcast for all your Black culture needs. In 1910, it was almost 8 million Blacks living in the United States. And of those 8 million Blacks, 7 million of them lived in the South. Over the next.
So he's saying that there's about 7 to 8 million African Americans, Negroes, living in the United States, where 90%, just about 90% of all African Americans lived in the South, right? Before this great migration that started in 1910. Keep going.
30 years, 1.5 million blacks migrated from the South to the North in what would be the greatest internal migration in United States history. They left to locate better jobs and housing and increase educational opportunities. The corrosive Jim Crow laws of the South made the choice easy to move north in an attempt to claim the American dream. The first black migrants made their way north in 1910. They primarily headed to cities in the Northeast. They settled in major industrial areas like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, New York, and Philadelphia. During the time period of the Black Exodus from the South, from 1910 to 1930, the African American population in Detroit grew from just 6,000 to over 120,000, and New York tripled from 100,000 to 328,000 African Americans. African Americans were not the only ones to migrate in mass. A great stream of Europeans also immigrated to the United States. From 1870 to 1925, 25 million European immigrants settled in the United States. This was only started to wane during the start of World War I. This was due to a large number of European men entering the military and the wave of anti-immigrant sentiment that started here in the United States. This led to Congress passing laws to further reduce the flow of immigrants in this country. The war effort during World War I led to increased demand for industrial products made in the North, but they were without the European immigrants that they had been using. So this left many industries without an adequate supply of unskilled laborers. This led the manufacturers to replenish their workforce with Southern blacks. Northern companies offered well-paying jobs, free transportation, low-cost housing as inducements to blacks moving north.
Paul.
The labor agents.
So, right? You gonna say something? Can you speak up, please?
Is it true that when we had like Black Wall Street and what was I about to say? We had churches and stuff that they knew that why did it go so far knowing that they were the people Israelites? It's because
Well, not many of them knew that. Okay. So here, what we're learning right now is this great migration. A big chunk of it was endorsed and promoted from many organizations and companies in the industrialized world of the North, such as a lot of car manufacturers, right? Making it enticing the African American population to move up to the North to fit into these jobs, because during World War I, a lot of the labor force, the workforce of the industrialized North, many of them were enlisting into the army for World War I to fight in Europe, which led a big gap that needed to be filled. And what they did was they were able to bring and encourage African Americans to travel up north, where they would have better jobs compared to having to work the fields and get low pay in the South. They would have discounted lodging and homes, whereas they would be forced to live on their own in the wilderness or on their ex-slave master's land and have to pay taxes and rent for that, right? There was just great opportunities for our people to come to the North for a better quality of life, education, employment, better living standard as compared to living in the South. Yes.
So,
You got to speak up, okay?
yes. So the blacks actually had it good as far as coming from the South to the North.
I wouldn't say had it good. I would definitely call it what it was. They were fleeing oppression and slavery for what looked like a better quality of life. Because even when they came up to the North, slavery was big in the North. If we don't forget the last few classes we had, the second biggest slave port and slave trade was here in New York City in Wall Street, where the second most slavery and selling of people was here, right here downtown. Yeah.
Now, I was gonna say that what happened when World War I was over? Did the white Edomites come back for the jobs that.
Yep, that's something that's something that created a big issue after World War One, especially leading into the Great Depression, where white workers coming back from the war were demanding and forcing companies to fire and let go the African American workforce so that way they can get those jobs. Okay, keep going.
Would receive a fee for every recruit they provided the company. And some labor agents would just stand on street corners in the South and sell the idea of a better life to an eager, captive audience. And while most of the jobs in the North were unskilled positions, they paid laborers more than they could ever receive in the South. In the North during World War I, the average pay was $3 to $4 a day, while in the South, most sharecroppers only averaged 75 cents to $1 a day. One of the most interesting aspects of the Great Migration is that it was pretty much a leaderless movement.
Was it like
Individual blacks
the pay?
weighed the possibilities of settling in the North versus their prospect of staying in the South long term. Jim Crow limited everything in their life: their housing, their jobs, how much they could make, their education, and their ability to vote and change their circumstances. African Americans in the North faced intolerable social situation under Jim Crow, while the North provided opportunities and basic civil rights. The migration was not that unsimilar to other migrations of refugees escaping famine or war or genocide in other parts of the world, traveling long distances in the hopes of a better life. The main routes of the Great Migration followed railway lines from points in the South to specific industrial centers in the North. For instance,
Wait, keep going.
the Illinois Central Railroad sent blacks from Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee to Chicago and other nearby cities like Detroit and Cleveland. The East Coast Seaboard Line sent blacks from Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina to New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C.
Pause. Now, if you take a few moments to look at this map, right, you'll see that a good chunk of African Americans who were fleeing the South actually came from Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, South, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia. They came from these particular areas, and from 1910 all the way to 1940, right? These our ancestors came and they went north to big cities like Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago. They went to Norfolk, Virginia. They would go to New York City, Boston, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, right? Pittsburgh. They would head into these areas in search of work and employment because that's where the industrial North was. And then after 1940s, after World War II, during World War II and after World War II, all the way up until the 70s, that's when African Americans from the same regions of the let's call it the Southeast, actually ended up traveling west, going to Colorado, Denver, Kansas City, going to Arizona, like Phoenix, going to San Francisco and Los Angeles and California, going all the way up to Seattle and Washington and Portland and Oregon, right? That's where they started to migrate after or post World War II, during and post World War II. Please keep going.
Once companies stopped covering travel expenses, it became very expensive to travel from the South to the North.
Stop.
Blacks.
So to help entice the workers, these companies were going down to the South, recruiting, basically standing on the street corner. You know how you go walk in the street and you'll see people trying to advertise Assurance wireless cell phones and try to get you to sign up and get a free phone? That's basically what they were doing, trying to sell the idea, this dream of that if you came to the North, there'll be work waiting for you, there'll be better living, higher pay, better education, more opportunities compared to living in the South. However, at one point that cut off because they were paying for people to travel up north, taking the trains up north. However they can get them, they would pay for those expenses to move them up to the North. Then it came a time where that stopped. So now African Americans who were still living in the South trying to get to the North, they had to find resources and means to cover the expenses of just a simple travel up to the North. Keep going.
For struggle to come up with the money and the growing demand for railroad travel, railroads increased their prices. And in 1915, it only cost 2 cents a mile to travel by railway. But by 1918, it cost over 24 cents a mile. As a result, Black families would often have to save for their fare, selling their belongings, or sending only one family member at a time. Other families would attempt to travel in stages, often stopping for work and raising money so they could continue their journey.
Pause.
In addition,
Now, this migration sounds very similar to a more recent migration of Hispanic people actually traveling in caravans from South America and Central America, going to the Mexico-American border. I believe the number was about 6 million that was recently reported in the news when it first started happening, when they finally lifted that, got rid of that law that prevented free passage or free entrance into the United States. Now you get like 10,000 refugees entering the city almost every day or every month, something like that. You gonna say something?
And we're on the verge of having another scenario where they just announced that St. Louis, a city in decline, is setting up programs to try to entice migrants to come from here in New York and go take jobs out there.
No, it's same thing. You know what both of these remind me of? Can anyone guess what this reminds me of in the Bible?
The Exodus.
Exactly. This is eerily similar to what we read about in the book where in the Bible where Moses led his people out of Egypt and into the wilderness trying to find a place of their own to live, to thrive, to escape the slavery that they were in for over 400 years. Keep going.
to the cost of traveling, Black families had to migrate in secret. They feared reprisals from Southerners in local communities, so they would slip away in the middle of the night. And they had good reason to worry. Some whites in the South were shocked at the size and scope of the migration and were livid at the loss of cheap labor. So they pulled
That also sounds like in Egypt, right? After Pharaoh decided to let Moses and his people go, as soon as they left, what happened? They were like, wait, who's going to work these lands? Who's going to go make my mortar and bricks to build stones and houses? Who's going to farm the land? Who's going to listen? We can't let them leave. Let's go get them back. And that's when Pharaoh had his army come and chase us. And thank the Lord, they got swallowed up by the river. Yep, keep going.
migrating Blacks off trains and off buses and beat them and put them in jail. Labor agents were.
And so to stop our ancestors from leaving the South and heading to the North, they would find us, take us off buses, and beat us. They would stop trains, pull us off the trains, and beat us, then throw us into jail because your whole entire existence was based off of slavery. The economy of the South thrived because of free labor from slaves. And now you have your entire workforce, your entire labor force, all your employees basically leaving to go somewhere else, which is going to leave you and your economy and your way of living to crumble. And so what this stirred up great resentment, anger, and hatred, which caused them to want to stop by any means necessary us from leaving the South. Keep going.
Fined, and local leaders attempted to keep them from Black communities. While all this was happening, the Southern media attempted to paint a rosy picture of Black life in the South. One headline from the Commercial Appeal of Memphis read, "South better for the Negro," says Mississippian. Colored people found to be prosperous and happy. This indicates that white Southerners understood the impact that the migration would have on their livelihood and the economy in their local communities, but exposed their inability to understand how Blacks in these communities felt about their circumstances.
So what they were doing, right? They were trying to paint the South as a beautiful place where black people should stay and want to stay. Sorry, where black people should stay and want to come back to, right? So they would try to put it in newspapers and magazines and get it published how Houston is so beautiful. Black people are enjoying life down here. You know, Mississippi loves African Americans and Negroes. They get to enjoy the great abundance of the Mississippi River. You know what I'm saying? They would try to do all these advertisements and publications to make living in the South more appealing, so that way people would stay. That way, black people would stay or travel back to the South. You want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say, my mom, she's 90. She turned 90 last month.
Okay.
And she was born in the middle of that. She was born in 33. And she said she was born in New York. But her parents would fight all the time. And her grandmother came up and saw all of that. So she said, I'm gonna get my mother out of there and bring her to the South. So she found a way to get the social worker, the
To help move them back.
to move her from the north to the south.
Yeah.
So she had signs all over her. She came in the train. I don't know how she didn't get lost. She came by herself, 2 years old, on the train, going down south to her grandmother.
Okay.
Somehow or another, she got there, and she said how the Great Migration started at that time, but she was comfortable in the South.
Okay.
She stayed there.
A lot of people, and listen, a lot of people did stay in the South, and these advertisements that they're speaking about did work. Some people would stay in the South because of this, would come back to the South because of this. Keep going, please.
White Southerners have been reading Chicago Defender, the leading black paper at the time, they would have understood the circumstances of blacks in the South. The Chicago Defender was founded in 1905 by Robert S. Abbott. He was a big advocate of migration of blacks to the North, and Chicago specifically. Abbott used an informal system of Pullman porters and entertainers to distribute their paper beyond Chicago to readers in the South. The Defender promoted Chicago as an attractive destination for Southern blacks, calling it the Promised Land. And the Defender also made the correlation of the plight of African Americans in the South to Jews being held in bondage in ancient Egypt. They also called the Great Migration the flight out of Egypt. As a Northern paper, the Defender had freedom to denounce issues outright. Its editorial position was to attack racial equality head on. Blacks would use the Defender to assure.
So even in this particular documentary, is reporting that the Chicago Defender called this migration the Exodus, because it basically was the Exodus. Keep going.
For themselves that migrating blacks would be welcome in northern cities, or at least more welcome than they were in the South. The Defender was one of the first newspapers to describe the racial hatred that blacks felt in the South and played a major role in influencing the Great Migration to urban areas. And the paper advertised the success of black individuals as inspiration to move. The Defender also featured job listings, train schedules that were posted to help facilitate relocation. The Defender also would post editorials, cartoons, and articles to attract attention to the movement. In January of 1917, they published an article on why they leave the South and outlined all the lynchings that happened in the South by state with a vivid description of their death. The Defender also featured letters and poetry submitted by successful recent migrants. Southern blacks wrote letters to the Defender looking for information about jobs and housing and just general life in Chicago. One of these letters published in the Defender in 1917 was an anonymous poem called Bound for the Promised Land, which captured the disposition of blacks in the South. Why should I remain any longer in the South? to be kicked and dogged around. Crackers shoot me in the mouth, shoot my brother down. I'd rather the cold snatch my breath and die from natural cause than to stay in the South and be beat to death under cracker law. The defender was an advocate for the Great Migration and against racism, and so incensed Southern politicians and local officials that the paper had to be smuggled into the South. White distributors refused to circulate the defender, and local police would confiscate any copies they found. Some places the publication was completely banned. One town in Mississippi called the defender German propaganda, which is in line.
So while the Chicago Defender was trying to spread the news of the real atrocities that were happening in the South, those in charge of the government and the police in these particular states and cities would try to confiscate these articles, these newspapers from Black people from getting their hands on, would beat people if they found them selling it, reading it, or trying to give it away. So they faced, you're right?
Yeah.
So they face all types of issues of trying to spread this truth, even by listing the amount of lynchings or hangings committed by the South against Black people and describing them in detail. That was a big no, because again, you're taking their workforce, and the South will do anything to keep those newly freed slaves and their future generations in the South. Yes.
What happened to the displaced Black people when the white people were calling back for their jobs, their homes, their land in New York and places like Delaware, Michigan, and all that?
A lot happened. Poverty, more oppression. When you can't find jobs anymore, you face a lot of famine, hunger issues. And that was the reason for many of the race riots that happened in the early 1900s and the mid 1900s here, especially here in Harlem. We had 3 riots in Harlem in 1930, 35, 1943, and 1967, if I'm not mistaken, all stemming from post-World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, post-World War II, people, white soldiers coming back demanding their jobs. Okay? Keep going.
With the anti-German sentiment post-World War I. All of these actions to stop the defender was basically unsuccessful because the defender was the most read and most influential Black paper in the country at the time. It was estimated at its height, every paper sold was read by 4 to 5 African Americans, putting its readership at over 500,000 people a week. During this exodus, African American organizations formed to help aid Black migrants in the challenges that they faced in their new urban environment. And the most popular of those organizations was the NAACP. Just as the Chicago Defender was their main news source for migrating Blacks, the NAACP became their primary civil rights organization. It was founded in 1909 in response to racial injustice and offered legal and economic help to migrating Blacks. The NAACP fought against restrictive covenants preventing Blacks from moving into white neighborhoods and lobbied against school segregation in northern cities. They also lobbied unsuccessfully for a federal anti-lynching bill. The NAACP even featured a magazine called The Crisis, which also fought racism and racist policies in both the North and the South. And by April of 1919, the NAACP had grown from 9,000 members to 51,000 members and had a dozen chapters all over the country. The Crisis was also circulated to almost 100,000 readers. Chicago and the North in general was far from a promised land. The Great Migration triggered a housing shortage in almost every major urban center. This crisis was made even worse for Blacks because of segregationist policies. Although segregation in the North was not specifically defined by law like it was in the South, as Blacks poured in to the North, angry groups of whites from all major cities lobbied for laws to prohibit landowners from renting to Blacks in their neighborhoods.
Stop.
So,
as we're moving up here, right, and in the midst of all of this, white people in these areas were still against us from coming up there. So the whites in the South didn't want us to leave. The whites up north didn't want us to come, right? So they would create laws or push for laws to be made so that way black people couldn't move into their communities, make it difficult to pay rents or face high rent increases, right? This is one of the strategies that whites here in the north would do to prevent us from coming up here, which would make us not take their jobs, right? Keep going.
The method they would use was restrictive covenant clauses in mortgage agreements that homeowners could only sell to a specific minority. All of these were a powerful force of racial discrimination, and some of these covenants were even endured in states into the 1960s. Housing shortages and discriminatory policies, along with neighborhood pressure not to sell or rent to blacks, left black families with very few options for housing. So they congested into poor neighborhoods with overpriced rent. Landlords frequently took full advantages of the housing shortages to charge exorbitant rent to black migrants. The high cost of housing forced blacks to share tiny apartments with friends and relatives. Some apartments became so overcrowded, migrants had to share a bed with one person sleeping while the other person would work. As the migration grew, blacks would migrate in patterns, moving to specific areas in the north, settling in neighborhoods where they had family and friends, or with areas with a strong black communities.
Pause it.
Some places
And don't be surprised if this is what we will end up having to do again. Because you know how difficult it is. And you about to say something?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have to pay 80 times the rent of 80 times the rent of salary.
Crazy.
And if you don't have that, then you have to pay another insurance on top of that. They force you to get it.
Correct. Right. And I remember we talked about this last time. The rent in New York City is ridiculous. For a one bedroom, for a studio apartment, it'll be like $1,500. For you know what I'm saying, like for a box.
That's an excellent deal. If you find a studio for $1,500,
You know what I'm saying?
2,300.
Right.
They call it a one bedroom.
Right. That's a lot for a studio. I remember growing up, you know, I was making money, 18, 19, studio, $600. Like, yeah, mom, I'm gonna move out. You know what I'm saying? Like, and now I'm looking at a studio apartment, $1,500, $1,800, how small it is. One bedrooms, like $2,200 for a one bedroom. Like, it's ridiculous on these rents over here. Say something, sis?
It costs $1,918 for me to have a studio in the Bronx.
It costs you almost $2,000 just for a studio in the Bronx. And at one point, no one wanted to live in the Bronx. You know what I'm saying? Now it's $2,000. That's insane. But, you know, not only do we still do this, where we have to all gather and live together, right? You're going to see a lot of that happening even more as all these crises start taking place and continue to happen. You know, this war in the Middle East is prophesied in the Bible to happen. You know, what do you think was going to happen when milk goes up by $3 a gallon? Or when gas is no longer $4.50, and that's still a lot for us. It goes up to $9 and $12. I don't know if you remember the class we did on the Zootsu riots like 2 weeks ago. They were rationing gasoline and fabric and textiles. Soon you won't be able to wear the clothes that you would normally wear because they got to ration the clothing for military outfits and other things of importance that America deems important. Keep going.
Chicago had neighborhoods that were populated with people all from the same southern town. As a positive result of these housing tensions, many blacks ended up creating their own cities within big cities, fostering an explosion of African American culture. The most prominent example was in Harlem. A formerly all-white neighborhood by the 1920s housed over 200,000 African Americans. The birth of the Harlem Renaissance was a direct result of mass migration of African Americans. The Harlem Renaissance was one of the most influential, intellectual, social, artistic movements of the 20th century. New York was a major destination for migrating blacks, and Harlem was their overwhelming area of choice within New York. Attracting Southern blacks seeking work, it also attracted educated blacks who made this an area a center of culture. Harlem was originally developed in the 19th century as an exclusive suburb for white middle to upper middle classes. Its affluent beginnings led to the development of stately houses, grand avenues, and world-class amenities like the Harlem Opera House. During an enormous influx of European migrants in the late 19th century, the once exclusive district was abandoned by the white middle class who moved farther north in New York City. The music of choice in Harlem during the 1920s was often played in speakeasies offering illegal liquor. Jazz became a great draw not only to Harlem residents, but to an outside white audience because it became very fashionable to frequent the Harlem nightlife. Businessmen quickly.
And because of this great migration, right, gave birth to one of the most beautiful artistic periods, eras, and expressions of the United States history, which was the Renaissance. The Black Renaissance broke through music like the blues and jazz, and you'll see all these different artists, painters, Duke Ellingtons, all those people that still held a piece of the South and where they came from, and merged it and blended into this big melting pot of African American culture that was part old and part new right here in Harlem, which spread to other cities like Chicago and Detroit and Cleveland and Philadelphia, all because of this great migration. You want to say something? Yeah, that's dope. You know what I'm saying? Like, so he's just throwing people in the air and going like this and stuff like that. Like when I look back and watch videos of our people back in those days, it must have been such an exciting time where there is some sense of freedom to the point where you're free to do that without repercussions, as if compared to trying to do something of a similar sort in the South. You know what I mean? Like, we were able to have our own businesses. We were able to have authority over our own families and not be subjugated to a slave master tearing your family apart. Coming up with our own sense of style and dress and culture and music that belong to us. And of course, like everything, everyone wants a piece of what we have. Everyone wants to take advantage of what we have. That's why he's saying that this period in time, this artistic expression that we were showing and putting out into the world, everyone wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to see it. They wanted to be in the places, although they didn't want to live with us. They wanted to be in the places where they can get a glimpse or a snippet of how artistic and creative in our culture was. Keep going.
Realized that white people wanted to experience black culture without actually having to socialize with African Americans.
Well,
so they created.
Didn't I just say that? You know what I'm saying? This is what they wanted to do. That's like everyone wants to be black, but they don't really want to be black.
Right.
Exactly. They want to wear, like for instance, white kids wanted to wear the do-rags and the fitteds to the side and baggy pants and G-Unit wife beaters, but no one really wanted to go live in Jamaica, Queens.
Right.
No one really wanted to go live in Spanish Harlem. No one wanted to go live in Castle Hill in the Bronx. No one wanted to go live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where we were at, because if you were really going to be like us, you would have to experience the experiences of us. And a lot of it were horrendous treatment that no one wants to be subjected to. A lot of it was poverty that no one wanted to be with. No one wants to grow up in a broken home. No one wants to be separated from their families. No one wants to experience how it is to eat bread sandwiches. And I mean just bread sandwiches, 2 pieces of bread together, you know what I'm saying? And a little bit of coke. No one wants to experience that when they can just eat a lobster, eat a steak, have nice dress shoes on. No one will want to trade that for what we had to endure for so long. You want to say something, Brandon? No? You all right? How you liking the class so far? That's good? Okay. What are you learning so far? Okay. What do you think?
It's interesting. I mean, I'm half black, so
Okay.
it's mandatory.
Okay. Your dad is African American, right? Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's keep going.
Clubs that catered specifically to them. One of the most successful of those clubs was the Cotton Club,
Now,
which featured.
Now, the Cotton Club, right? Everyone thinks about the Cotton Club as like this black club. The Cotton Club was owned by white people, and they catered only to white people. Although you could work there, although you may be able to work there, you were not allowed to really go there. It was for white audiences. Though yes, the performers were black, people singing and dancing in there were black, but the patrons there were white. This is how one of the ways that they got their little snippet of our culture of not having to be around us. You want to say something? Your grandmother was a showgirl on Cotton Club. Did she ever tell you about some of the experiences there? No? You say something? No? And that's what it was. They were able to see us perform and act however we acted, but not be around us, not have to socialize with us. Keep going.
Frequent performances by musicians like Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway. Some in the community derided even the existence of such clubs, but others believed that this was a sign that Black culture was moving towards racial acceptance. The visual arts was never that welcoming to Black artists. Art schools and galleries and museums would shut them off, but in Harlem, they found acceptance. The Harlem Renaissance was a golden age for African American visual artists, writers, musicians, and actors. They were able to take their lives as Blacks and experiences slavery and segregation and just daily life in Harlem as inspiration for creation of amazing work. The Harlem Renaissance brought the Black experience to the American public, and the explosion of culture and the legacy in Harlem Renaissance changed how America and the world viewed African Americans. And when Blacks arrived in their northern destination, they were often met with resistance and hostility in the form of immigrants who already lived in these cities. These immigrants made up almost 25% of the nation's workforce. So as Blacks applied for jobs in industries dominated by these immigrants, those immigrants perceived the Black migrants as a potential threat to their livelihood. Yeah. They saw Black migrants as alien invaders who needed to be contained by a group who wasn't faring that much better than they were. These two groups were competing for the same low-skilled jobs. Businesses quickly learned that Southern Blacks were willing to work for lower wages. They undercut the earnings of immigrants, and factory workers learned that they could pit the two groups against each other for wages, and this caused major anger and resentment amongst the immigrants. Black migrants always had a complicated relationship with labor unions. Major labor unions had accepted immigrants into their membership, but they had banned Black migrants from joining. This overwhelmingly caused majority of Black workers not to be unionized. This stance often worked to the advantage of management because Blacks were excluded from working in unions. They would often hire them as strikebreakers. Blacks' role as strikebreakers further contributed to tensions with the immigrant white workers. And by 1919, industrial unions attempted to mend their relationship with migrating Blacks by attempting to remove the color barrier. But nothing came of this because the message was clear that Blacks didn't trust the unions and the unions didn't trust the Blacks. As the Black population.
So we faced a lot of difficulty even when we moved up here. You know, we had to worry about these immigrants coming from Europe who were also unskilled laborers competing with us for jobs, right? And these labor unions, these corporations knew that they can pit us against each other, and knew that we would end up working for far less than what we were actually supposed to be paid, right? And that's where we get this resentment of us not trusting the labor unions, right? Because of this period of time. Keep going.
In northern cities grew, racial discrimination intensified, and white anger and anxiety over this influx led to violence and increased frequency. This violence turned into
So because of this, a lot of violence happened. There was a lot of fights. This is where these race riots would start to come from, because of our experiences and the harsh conditions that we were living in a place where we thought we wouldn't have to worry about it. You know, we just left the South. We've been up here for 20, 30 years, and we're not achieving the dream or the vision that was sold to us. You know, we wanted the American dream too, now that we were free, but we found that it was very difficult trying to get employment when facing employment wars with people coming from Europe over here looking for work as well. You know, it was difficult for us to get the quality education we thought we were going to get, because funding, as we all can tell by today's day and age, funding is always given last to areas of where we predominantly live. Our school systems are crappy. You know, the educational system doesn't really cater to us as much. We have always end up getting outdated resources and materials to teach our kids, where as more predominant areas and more affluent schools and areas will get that funding, you know? Keep going.
To the Red Summer, which is a series of race riots in cities all over the nation. I documented these events more in depth in episode 3 of the Red Summer, but the increased competition for jobs and housing amongst European immigrants and Black migrants directly led to the violence of the Red Summer in several major cities like Chicago, where 38 people were killed and 500 more were seriously injured, with over 1,000 being left homeless. In the aftermath of the riots, the Chicago Commission on Race Relations found positivity amongst African Americans. The commission conducted extensive interviews with Black immigrants, and they found that despite the issues prompted by the riots, Blacks in Chicago were still overwhelmingly satisfied with their lives in the North.
Pause it.
They were able to find.
Why wouldn't we? We're no longer in the heat. We're no longer in the South. We're no longer being lynched and beaten mercilessly by our former slave masters in the South, right? Up here, we can actually have a family. It may be difficult, right? Up here, our families can stay together, not being torn apart and sent to a different state, to a different plantation. We can stay together. You know, we could get jobs. It's going to be difficult, and the pay might not be the best, but at least we were getting paid. At least we were able to live or have some sense of freedom compared to living in the South. Keep going.
Find jobs, and they were making more money. And they felt like even after the 1919 riots, they had more freedom from white oppression in Chicago than they ever had in the Jim Crow South. They expressed optimism over their northern future. And although they still face segregation in housing and limitations for jobs in northern cities, one area where they were equal was they had the ability to vote. The arrival of Black workers changed the political landscape in the North. One of the first things that Blacks did upon arriving in the North was register to vote, a civil right that had been virtually impossible to them in the South. African Americans became the majority in many urban districts because they did not face the same voter restrictions they faced in the South. The ultimate decline of the first Great Migration was the Great Depression of 1929.
And voting has done nothing for the Black and Hispanic community.
Right.
Voting has not benefited us. The American political system is a system that benefits white people, right? By us voting, we still are facing lack of educational opportunities. By voting, we still have to deal with employment variances in terms of the pay standards between black and white comports. If you need a charger, the charger's right there in the back, and then the extension cord is right here, right? Voting hasn't helped us. You know what voting did? Voting in 2019-18 made an African man president who legalized homosexuality. Voting helped pass the 3 strike laws in the country. You know, voting passed stop and frisk laws, where our sons and uncles and fathers were getting thrown across police cars and up against brick walls in the attempt of trying to find weapons, and drugs, right? Voting did not stop families from being torn apart. Voting did not stop drugs from entering our communities. Voting did not stop gang violence from happening, right? The gray extension cord's right there on the floor. It's a thick wire. There you go. No, not that. It's like an outlet plug. No. It's not there. Light gray. It's light gray. Right here. Whoa, my fault. Sorry about that. Voting did nothing. Does someone disagree? Do you think voting did something to benefit Black people and Hispanic people? Because if so, please let me know, because I would love to look at it, learn about it, research it, find out studies, and read some abstracts, articles and papers. Let me know. Please put it in the chat. So voting, this idea of voting was like a false dream, right? You good? Okay, cool. It was a false dream, yes? 2018? Okay, I only voted once, and that was the first year Obama was running for election. And I had no idea why the hell I was voting for him. I just entered college, and he came to speak at my college, and all I know is that he had a whole bunch of Secret Services taking people out of their dorm rooms to guard the windows in case there was an active shooter or something like that, And then when he finally became president, me and my friend Christopher Ryland, another Black kid, we started running down the street screaming, "We got a Black president! We got a Black president!" Not knowing what the hell we voted for or what he stood for. Like, I can't tell you one thing that Obama had on his campaign that he said he was going to do. I can't tell you one thing. Exactly, because voting does nothing. Please continue.
The U.S. stock market crashed and the economic crisis known as the Great Migration happened. 1/4 of the population lost their jobs. Blacks were especially hard hit by this crushing economic downturn. And by 1932,
so once the Great Depression came, the Great Depression brought a lot of setbacks to every sector of the workforce, and we suffered the most. Keep going.
56% of the Black population was unemployed compared to only 28% of the white population. The Great Depression wiped out many job opportunities in the industrial North, and for African Americans, it caused a sharp decline in their migration. It wasn't until 1939 and the start of World War II that was the stage set for the second migration. Of course, this is a story for another day on this podcast. But African American migrants seeked a better social and economic opportunities. Many blacks were not able to escape racism by migrating north, and African Americans were segregated into ghettos, and urban life introduced new challenges that they didn't face in the South. But despite these disappointments and challenges, millions of African Americans were still able to build a better life for themselves and their families in the North. Jobs were more plentiful, education opportunities were more plentiful, and they were able to build a stable middle class of their own. While the Great Migration was a leaderless movement, African Americans found that they were stronger as a united front, a new era of political activism amongst African Americans who disenfranchised in the South, but found a new place for themselves in public life and their ability to change their circumstances. Thank you. This has been One Mic. I was your host, Country Boy. Once again, if you like this, you enjoyed this, please consider donating to my Patreon page so I can continue to bring you dope content. Please review us on Apple Podcasts and check out The Cut for all of your Black culture needs.
All right. Clap it up. Country Mike on the One Mic History channel, he does a phenomenal job. And I've been watching a lot of his videos, and, he's pretty thorough with the research that he presents in each of his documentaries, So, Country Mike, keep doing your thing. We appreciate it because it's a source that can be utilized to learn more about our history that we are not taught or shown, even in college, unless you're taking specific courses that are geared towards African American studies or even American studies. Yes.
I just wanted to say that tonight, I didn't expect this, but I'm happy I learned something I didn't even know.
Well, sound credit. Clap it up for the system, man. Right, and that's what life is about. You know, life is not about happiness. You know, life is full of disappointments, full of disappointments. We're not fortunate to have a happy life because we are not following the law, statutes, and commandments of God, right? And even then, life is always still a battle. You got to battle with yourself mentally. You got to battle with yourself spiritually. You got to battle with the people you encounter. You know, going to your slavery is a battle. You know, and classes like these, brotherhood classes, scripture breakdown classes, even learning the ancient Hebrew on Fridays, it's all a battle. And it's always something new that we learn every single day because these are not materials and things that are taught to us. And I believe it's in the book of Thessalonians is train up a child on the way they should go, right? Is it Thessalonians? I think that's Thessalonians. Train up a child. Let's double check that. I think it's 2 Thessalonians. Train up a child. Oh, it might be Proverbs.
Yeah, that sounds like Proverbs.
Right? I think it might be Proverbs. It's Proverbs, and then in Thessalonians is what was written aforetime was written for our learning.
Yeah, Proverbs 22:6.
Yes, Proverbs 22:6. Can you bring that up on the script, Baba Gashal? Proverbs 22:6. Right, these are things that should have been taught to us, right? But we don't hear about these stories because many a times we don't grow up with our parents. Many times we hide things from the younger generation in hopes that they won't know or remember the tough times. But all that does is a disservice to our children, our future generations, because they grow up thinking that they can do everything and anything like our white counterparts can. But meanwhile, we have such great setbacks. And by trying to get by trying to enter into a system that was always made to keep us low, our dreams can get crushed. You know, you got it? Read it, Baba Shah.
Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go.
Now, this scripture is talking about the law, statutes, and commandments, right? But even if we use this scripture to talk about the history of our people here, you know, our parents would train the young men to be quiet and soft and docile, to stay out of the target gazes of our slave masters. You know, they used to teach us lessons on how to stay in our place by taking the biggest and strongest man and breaking him down to discourage us from uprising. Right? Keep going.
And when he is old, he will not depart from it.
And it's important to train children in these law, statutes, and commandments because it would allow us to know who we are, what we are supposed to do, and how we live our life going forward. Right? Let's get that 2 Thessalonians, I believe it's 2 Thessalonians written aforetime. Oh, it's Romans. Yes. I don't know why I'm thinking Thessalonians. Romans, go ahead.
Romans chapter 15 and verse 4. For whatsoever things were written aforetime.
Now, this also is talking about the scriptures. We have to learn that, like, if you open up a Bible, it's full of history. If it's not talking about the laws of God, if it's not talking about the curses or the blessings, it's talking about the history of our ancestors. How we entered into Egypt, how we left Egypt, how we were living in the wilderness, how we were being attacked, and how we were going into slavery in Babylon, then slavery in Assyria, then slavery under the Persian and the Medes, and slavery under Greece, slavery under the Romans. Like, all that is so much history that we are not taught. I was telling the brother Brandon earlier today, like, our history starts at slavery here in the Americas. Like, How were the people living here before that? I didn't learn about all these great Indian Native American war chiefs in high school, in junior high school. I didn't learn about how the Incan empires really were. Like I remember going over small sections of these things in high school, but learning about the Ming and Qing and Zhang dynasties of China was like big parts of our curriculum. Learning about the Holy Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire, and all the different monarchs of England with white people. I learned about that. I learned about the Jewish Holocaust, but slavery in America was such a small portion of the curriculum. You want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I knew right away when I found out about the Israelites that the Hispanic population and Native Americans were also Israelites, because when I was growing up, they used to mix the Hispanics and the Native Americans used to mix. So that's how I knew it was true.
Like all my life, I grew up with nothing but black and Hispanic people. Like,
Right.
and I grew up here in this area. I went to school in PS 108. I went to Tito Puente before we went to Academy. Like I went to after school programs all in this area. I can't remember being friends with a white person. Like I can't remember having a white friend in junior high school. You know, I can't remember having a white friend in elementary school. When I first started interacting with white people was when I went to high school, because my high school was a performing arts school. It was in the middle of Midtown. You know, that's when I started interacting with other people, Asians and Chinese, Japanese, Korean, English, French, and Italian and Irish people. But growing up here in the hood, like everyone was black and Hispanic, Jamaican, African American, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Mexican. Like I can't think of not one thing of one person or one event that I would go to, and it was white people. Growing up and having birthday parties, it was white. It was black and Hispanic people at my birthday parties. Going over to other family functions, it was black and Hispanic people at all these functions, and we were all living the same. We were all battling the same type of things, going through the same issues, the same problems, all getting those paper WIC food stamp checks. My mom used to be mad when I would color on them. You know what I'm saying? Like you know what I'm saying? Like, come on, it's like you talking about paper money. Like that's basically monopoly money. Not once did I ever interact with them growing up. But these things that were written, they should have been taught to us. This Bible, me going to Catholic church, Catholic school, I wasn't learning about the Old Testament and the history of the Bible. I was only learning about the Catholic doctrine of the New Testament, the Gospels, Mark, Luke, John, and Matthew. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't taught about the actual history, comparing it to world history, how much how valid it is when you compare them. Because, excuse me, you read about the Persians in the Bible. I learned about Persians in school. You read about the Babylonian Empire. I learned about the Fertile Crescent and Mesopotamia in history class.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I learned about the great Roman Empire and Julius Caesar and Nero and Pontius Pilate and all these other people in the Bible, right? I had to learn it in history class, not from the Bible. We didn't learn any historical facts from the Bible. It was all based on social studies, European world history, world civilization history 1 and 2, European history, this and that. Never once was I taught about the information that was in the Bible that could have greatly steered my life into being who I was always supposed to be. Sis?
The last client I had when I was a home health aide, she was Italian, right?
Yeah.
Her whole family was Italian. It was this So she was Catholic, and she had a big giant statue of Maria.
They all do.
Jesus,
The
you know, in the front of her yard. So I just knew as an Israelite, I ain't supposed to be worshiping that statue. So anytime she would go to the statue, let's reserve that. She would go to the statue. She would wear gloves, but she didn't want me touching her.
Mm.
And she would worship the statue. I would stand all the way back. She used to get mad. Then she stopped coming because she knew I wasn't worshiping the statue.
Yeah, and we're not supposed to do worship idols, right? But today you'll have Black and Hispanic people going in front of a European so-called Jesus Christ in the church, bowing down, crying, and kissing the stone feet of this white man, right? I've seen it. They would go and create in the Catholic Church, right? There's sections where you can go and kneel and light a candle, right? And pray in front of the statue of Virgin Mary. People actually go and do these things, but if they only read the Bible, and the Bible is supposed to be taught and read in the church, they would read that you should not be bowing down and worshiping and praying to idols. This is all history because you learn about us doing that in the Bible.
Right.
It's historical proof in the Bible that our ancestors were doing this. We were always facing curses and punishments for doing this until we got out of doing this and were able to get blessed by the Lord again. This was written aforetime, but none of this was learned to us. None of this was taught to us. Keep reading.
That we, through patience and comfort of the scriptures,
Of the what?
Of the scriptures.
If only we can have these scriptures, we would know we need these patience, because what's supposed to happen, the prophecies in the Bible, is going to happen. We will be comforted knowing that as long as we just kept these laws, statutes, and commandments in this Bible, in this book, we will be able to be comforted by what the result will be, which is rulership over the earth again, which will be getting Black people off of drugs, which will be letting Hispanic families be together again instead of being separated at the border, letting Native Americans fight alcohol addiction, right? Fight against our women being used as prostitutes and end up missing and found in ditches. This Bible would have everything we need to survive, to give us some type of meaning in our lives. Last thing.
Last thing I wanted to say was the lady, she believed in Caesar Borgia, and she would say, "Oh, Jesus was white, Mary was white, baby Jesus was white, she loved blue," and I just wanted to tell her so bad, you're wrong, Jesus is black.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't, because it's a slavery, and it doesn't, and to them it's not going to ever matter. As long as you know the truth, you don't got to force your beliefs on. Exactly.
I didn't want her to have a heart attack because she's praying to a black God.
So Jesus
No.
is black.
Yeah, Jesus is a black man.
So what about David?
David was a black man. You could think of David. Not only was David black, but he was quote unquote handsome. You know what I'm saying? Like, think of who was a black man that people think is handsome? Chris Brown, Usher. Who else? Who else is black people? Well, first of all, you are a Jew, because Jews is short for saying Judah. They were black, right? Continue what you're about to ask.
I figured that the Jewish people, they're descendants of David. Like most Jews are white, like Carmelites and Flatbush, the Jews that Yiddish, that speak Yiddish.
Yeah, Yiddish is not a language that the Hebrew spoke. It's called Hebrew. Those Jewish people and every single other white man that you see, they come from the lineage of Esau. Esau, we were here earlier, Esau was the fraternal twin brother of Jacob. Actually, let's get that. Let's go to where Esau came out red and hairy all over. This is history class. Why don't we just jump into that? But this was about the Great Migration. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Let's move into some more history, right? And let's talk about Esau and Jacob. Let's go and talk about how David was ruddy. You know there are such things as a like ruddy cows, and they're kind of like a reddish brown, but they're still brown. They're still black. And ruddy is just used to describe a good-looking person. He was good like if you want, yeah, David was a handsome brother. You know what's that song that Dougie? All the women love me. All the women love David. King David was a fly guy. You know what I'm saying? He was a stone cold killer, a stone cold warrior. You know what I'm saying? He chopped the head off of Goliath. He went and did the most impossible task that King Saul had him do just so he can marry his daughter. Like King Saul was a handsome, cold-blooded soldier. And that's why he loved the Lord so much. That's why the Lord chose him and let King Saul fall away to the wayside for his disobedience. You got it? You sharing it?
Sure, sir.
Oh, King Solomon was black. Yeah, that's what he said, right? King Solomon had some mean game. King Solomon could spit, get a woman to want to marry him today.
How many wives?
How many wives? Like 1,100 wives and like 600 concubines. You know what I'm saying? Ladies love King Solomon. King Solomon would be like who's a very famous and handsome dark-skinned brother. That women all love. He would be like a Denzel Washington. You know what I'm saying? Now he'd be more like a David. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. He was just a handsome dark-skinned brother. You know what I'm saying? Let's read this.
Genesis chapter 5 and verse 20.
You saw in 21.
21. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife.
Now Isaac is the son of Abraham. Well, one of the sons of Abraham, but Isaac is the only son that the Lord recognizes as the true heir. Now Isaac, he has a wife named Rebekah, and she's pregnant. She was barren. She was not able to have kids, and the Lord allowed her to have children from Isaac. Keep going.
Verse 22, and the children struggled together within her.
Now, while the children were growing in Rebekah's womb, the two children were fighting each other. They were struggling. There was an issue with them inside their mother. Keep going.
And she said, if it be so, why am I thus?
If I'm supposed to be pregnant with Isaac's children and the Lord's allowing this to happen, me to be pregnant, then why am I in pain? Why is there so much turmoil and commotion going on in my womb? Keep going.
And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, two nations are
What?
in two nations.
Two nations. That's two completely separate people. That's what a nation is. That's like the Chinese nation and the Indian nation. Two separate people, right? Inside Rebekah's womb, the Lord said that there's two nations of people in your womb. Although they're brothers, they're now being separated before they're even born, and they're being two separate nations. Keep going.
Are in thy womb, and two manner of people
What?
shall be separated.
To what?
Two manner of people.
Now, if they have the same father, same mother, normally you would think they have the same manner because they're going to be raised by the same way. However, in the womb, before they're even born, the God says that they're going to be two separate nations in your womb. They're going to act, behave, think, speak, do things completely separate from each other. Keep going.
And shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people.
And one son, the people that come from him is going to be stronger than the people that come from the other son. Keep going.
And the elder
The one that's born first, keep going,
shall serve the younger.
is going to serve the younger one. That means the younger one was going to rule over his older brother. The one that came out first was going to be servants and in servitude to the people of the younger brother. Keep going.
And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb.
Now, when she's about to give birth, they found out that she was giving birth to twins, to two boys. Keep going.
And the first came out red.
Came out what?
Red.
Red, right? Can you go on Google and just type in pictures of Esau? Can you share this? When you type in Esau, you see all these pictures of who?
Esau,
But today they're called.
white man.
That's who you see. And like Google's not gonna. Google's telling you right here. All we did was type in Esau, the name of Esau in Google search, and you're seeing nothing but red white people, except for that bald black guy. I don't know what he's doing there. His name is Esau, you know. But look, you're seeing Esau. This is red white people. Now go back to the Bible. Share that. Read it again. And the first
came out red.
came out what?
Came out red.
Esau's what color?
Red.
White people are what color?
Red.
Have you ever listen? Have you ever seen a white person get smacked in the face? What color do they turn?
Red.
When Tyson Fury got punched by Wilder, what color did he turn? They turn red. Keep going.
All over like in hairy garments.
And it's red all over, right? Because when you get a hairy garment, it shows all over like a hairy garment. So his body was full of hair, covered in hair, like you would normally see white people today. That's why Gillette razors are so popular, because all the white people are trying to take their hair off, right? Keep going.
And they called his name Esau.
And he was called Esau. Keep going.
And after that came his brother out.
And then after Esau was the oldest brother. He was born first. Keep going.
And his hand took hold on Esau's heel. And his name was called Jacob.
Now Jacob, notice how they said that Esau came out red and hairy like a garment. They didn't say nothing about Jacob. Exactly. He was just like everybody else. Brother?
Is that normal? That happens even today, that someone dark and white comes out at the same time as twins?
Yeah. Let's look up the statistics. Let's look up white and black baby brothers being born. Statistics for that. It happens. It's genetics, right? But here, this was the curse of the Lord, the mark that he put on Cain, right?
Meet the biracial twins no one believes are sisters.
Share that tab, please. Twin sisters. One came out white, one came out black. Twin brothers. It's absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. Say again? Curse of Cain, because Cain was a murderer from the beginning. And the Lord put a stain on him, a spot on him, that his spirit will always be recognized. And when Esau was born, he had that same spirit because it was showing. His skin showed it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, what's the question? Okay, and? No, like you got a light skin spot, okay? You know? See? Brothers right there, one white, one black. It is absolutely possible. That's enough. You can go back to the scripture. Right? Keep reading.
And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them.
Right? So here's the birth of two brothers. One that came out red, that was specifically mentioned because no one looked like him at all. And then you have Jacob, born regular, right? And yeah, Jacob looked just like everyone else.
So everyone else was black.
All the other people on earth were all dark-skinned people. We all came, right? We all came from Adam and Eve, right? When God flooded the land, we had Noah and his three sons, Noah, his wife, his three sons, and their three wives. All those people were of dark skin. Japhet, Ham, and Seth. All different colors of brown, different shades of brown. It wasn't until Esau where white people actually started to come onto the earth. And that's why Esau is the progenitor of who? Exactly. You can Google that. You can find that in the Zondervan's Pictorial Bible Dictionary. It'll tell you that Esau is the progenitor of the white race. Keep going. So I know. Let's get the image of Christ in the Revelation is the first chapter of Baba Kashah. Because a brother he doesn't know that Christ was a black man, right?
I always figured he was like light skin, white.
Light skin. Why?
That's what I see.
Right. That's what you see all the time. You go listen. You'll go into a Korean Christian church. Christ is Asian. You go into the Catholic church. Christ is a Italian man. You go into an Irish Christian church. Christ is an Irish man. You know what I'm saying? You look up. You type in Jesus Christ right now. Actually, hold that. Open up a new tab on Google, right? And type in Jesus Christ. Oh, what do you know? Share this. Share this real quick. Share this real quick. Let everyone see what you share. You just typed in Jesus Christ, right? All these images pop up. It's a white man. It's a white man. Now, people like to say Jesus wasn't white. He was Middle Eastern. He was an olive complexion.
Yeah.
Can you type in olive? Can you type in what are olives? Just type in what are olives. Right? This is what people that say Christ was olive complexion. Olives are green or black looking color, like a purple. Christ was green? Are you gonna tell me that Christ was green? Oh, Christ was an olive complexion, so he was green? I've never seen a green man in my life. But I've seen this dark olive. Look at this dark olive here. I see that walking out in Harlem.
Right.
I see that walking in Harlem every single day. You know what I'm saying? That's what I see. So when people say Christ was olive complexion, I know he's not green. I know he's black though. Right? Let's keep going.
Revelations chapter 1 and verse 13.
So hold on. Young man B, have you ever read the book of Revelations? No? Do you know what Revelations means? Revelation is the short word for revelation is to reveal, to show, to bring forth, right? Read.
And in the midst of the seven candlesticks.
So the seven candlesticks are the seven churches that were created during Peter and Paul's time, right? Keep going.
One like unto the Son of Man.
There's a vision that John the Revelator is having while he's imprisoned. I believe in the island of Patmos, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. He's in prison and he's having this vision, right? And he sees the Son of Man, which is talking about Jesus Christ, right? Keep going.
Clothed with a garment down to the foot.
It's saying that he's seeing Jesus in a garment, right? You see this garment right here on the wall? This is a more accurate depiction of what Christ looked like, right? He has a garment all the way from his shoulders all the way down to his feet. This garment stretches. That's a garment that priest wore. Keep going.
And girt about the paps with a golden girdle.
You see that big yellow lion that's in his midsection? That's a war belt that we would wear. That's a belt that priests would wear. That way that it covers our midsection. So we were in war. Our midsection, our sensitive, most exposed area, our gut will be protected from knife attacks, sword attacks, spears attacks. That's what that golden girdle is for. That's a war belt. Keep going.
Verse 14. His head.
His what?
His head.
His head, right? His head. Keep going.
And his hairs.
And his what?
Hairs.
Hairs. Where do you have hairs at on your body? Your face and where else?
armpits,
Armpits, yeah, where else?
legs,
Legs, where else?
arms,
Where else?
everywhere.
Right? You right? But what did it first say?
His head,
His what?
his head,
His head. And what?
and his hairs.
So on his head, his hairs. Right? We're talking about his head right now. The hairs on his head, on his face. Keep going.
were white
Were
like
what?
were
What?
white.
Well, what?
White.
What color is that right there? What color is his beard? Young man B, what color is his beard?
White,
What color is the hair on his head?
white.
Go back to that image of Jesus Christ. Share that. Just hit you sharing? Okay. Exit out that image. Can you see these images over here? What color is his hairs?
Black is brown,
It's black and what?
brown.
But the Bible just said what?
His hair was white, wool.
White like wool. White being the color, wool being the texture. Look at touch your hair right now. Try to ever try to put your hand through your hair and you like hitting knots and tangles and all that. That's wool, just like a sheep. Woolly. His hair was the color of was a white color, and the texture of his hair was like a lamb, was like a sheep. Very close, tight curls that people like to say is nappy, but it's not nappy. It's just more textured. It has more of a tight knit curl. That's why you see a lot like the brother right here. He's Puerto Rican. See his hair? That's woolly hair right there. Tight knit curls, right? Go back to the scriptures. Keep going.
Like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire.
What color is fire? What else? Okay. Red, orange. You can't see it right here because of the darkness of the image, right? But if you look up the eyes of Christ here, his eyes are green. His eyes are blue. His eyes are hazel. His eyes don't look nothing like the eyes that it's supposed to say is described in the Bible. And the reason why his eyes are red is because Christ drank wine. They accuse Christ of being a wine bibber, right? Have you ever drank alcohol before? You know what happens when you drink some alcohol? You get drunk, okay. You get a little tipsy, you know what I'm saying? What colors do your eyes turn? Never looked at it. Well, look up images of type in drunk red eyes. Just type in drunk red eyes. Right? When you're drunk, your eyes get a little glossy color. Right? Like that image right there. Your eyes get like a glossy red color because of the alcohol and alcohol in your blood. Right? Go back to the scripture, please. And share. There you go.
Oh, so like
Keep reading.
and his feet like unto fine brass.
Stop. You got a penny in your pocket? Anyone got a penny? Someone look for a penny. Baba Kasha. Any pennies up here?
Right here.
Right here. Take that penny. Right? What color is that penny?
Copper brown,
Copper brown. You know what color brass is?
brown.
Yeah. Now fine brass is like shined, nice and shiny, right? Keep reading.
As if they burned in a furnace.
Now what happens if you have you ever made a cake before? What happens if you leave it in the oven too long? It'll burn, right? What do you think would happen if you put a fire underneath that penny right there? It'll burn. What color would it turn? If it's burnt, if something's burnt, what the color is it?
Black.
Okay. It says that his feet, right? The color of his feet were like fine brass, nice, shiny, beautiful brass, as if what?
As if they burned in a furnace.
So when you take something that's been burnt in a furnace, that's when you don't flip your pancake over, one side turns black. So what was the color of his feet? Black. Does that image look black or does it look like an olive green color? Does it look like a white Jesus Christ that you see in all these churches? right? But when we look up Jesus Christ on the Google Images, does he look black? Does he look burnt? He looks white, right? Keep going.
And his voice is the sound of many waters.
Next scripture. You stop it there. So, to your question, is Jesus Christ black? The answer is yes. Yeah. Why wasn't I taught this when I did my confirmation and my communion at St. Cecilia's Catholic Church?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why didn't Father Francis tell me Christ was a black man? Why they have me bowing down to this white image of a Jesus Christ when John the Revelator, who wrote the book of Revelations, is depicting Christ looking like a black man?
I wanted to say that the reason for that is because the Pope prays to a black Jesus, prays to a black Mary, and all the disciples of black.
All disciples are black. If you look at some books like the Russian Icon, or even if you type in your phone and Google search, you'll see like in Russia, they'll have the black images of Christ, like statues, black statues of Christ. If maybe you can find it out real quick. Russian icons. Right? Let's go see that black Virgin Mary picture statue that they have. So yeah, share that real quick. See? Russian icons. That's Jesus and that's the Virgin Mary. They're black. They're not white. And this is not me making it up. These are paintings that painters painted over the centuries that we don't have access to because the Catholic Church doesn't show us these things. T.
You mentioned Revelation 1:13 about the 7 candlesticks.
Yes.
What were they?
Those are the 7 churches that were created.
7 churches.
Correct.
Well, interesting that Revelation 1:12, he says, I saw 7 golden candlesticks.
Yes.
So again, he's saying also the Son of Man was like golden too.
Because he was shining bright. You know? So yeah, Christ was a black man. But we all think that he's a white man. All right, let's go to I'm black and comely in the scriptures. Ooh. Okay, share that tab up, Michelle. This is the book of Songs of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5. Right? This is going to tell us how King Solomon described himself. All right?
Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5. I am black.
What?
I am black.
King Solomon is spitting game to his women, right? And he tells them,
I am black.
Hey, yo, shorty, let me tell you something.
I am black.
Listen, let me tell you something about me. Look at me, because I
am black.
King Solomon says he's black. He didn't say I'm white. He didn't say I'm green, I'm red. This king said, I'm what?
I am black.
I'm black. I am black. You say something?
He also didn't say color didn't matter.
Yeah, and right? Color don't matter in the Bible. Color does not matter. The church would tell you color doesn't exist in the Bible, but King Solomon said he was what?
Black.
Listen, there's no way around this. Like, the lies that we have been forced to accept, the lies about history, the lies about our identity, our culture, our language, has been pushed upon us so much that we can have a book, be able to read the book from beginning to end as many times as we want, but we will still believe someone telling us about the book versus ourselves reading the book.
Right.
No one is going to tell you that Jesus Christ was a black man, even though you can read that John the Revelator, a prophet and priest of God, said that Christ looked like a black man. No one's going to teach us that King Solomon said he was black, when you can just read the book, the Songs of Solomon, and Solomon himself says, I am black. Keep going.
But comely.
But what?
But comely.
You know what comely means? Comely means beautiful, handsome, gorgeous, fly, dope. King Solomon said, I am black and beautiful. I am black and handsome. I am black and super fly. All the women love me because I'm black and handsome. You know what I'm saying? And keep going.
Oh, ye daughters of Jerusalem.
He's saying, all you daughters of Jerusalem, all the daughters that are, all the women that are his wives, they're all daughters of Jerusalem because we all come from the same nation. We're all the same nation. You see something?
And just to be clear, because we've been going into the Hebrew a lot lately, that but is a y. That's how you say and. So that but is just a style of speech. Like it's not like he was saying but.
Yeah.
He's saying I'm black and comely.
I'm black and beautiful. Keep going.
O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar.
Have you ever heard of Kedar? Kedar is a place, I believe, in I think it was Arabia, in the Middle East, right? Where the tents there that were used, they were all black. So he's not only did he say I'm black and beautiful, he's giving you an example. You know how black and beautiful I am? I'm so black, I look like the tents of the city of Kedar, which were black. King Solomon is saying that I am black. So we got Esau on Google search showing Esau looking like a white man, a red man. We got the Bible saying that Esau was red. We got John the Revelator depicting Christ to be like this image here. Now, we don't pray to this. We don't worship this. This is just an image to help us solidify the idea that Christ was a black man, because every time we see people talk about Christ, he is as like a white man, right? So we can see that John the Revelator says that Christ looks like a black man versus what the Catholic Church and the Christian Church teaches us, that Christ is a white man, right? We go into the Bible and read that King Solomon says he's a black man. When people like the Jewish community and the Catholic Church like to say that Solomon was a white man, but out of his own lips, he says, I am black. What do you think now?
The Bible doesn't lie.
Right? The Bible don't lie. The only thing that lies is people's understanding of the Bible.
Right.
There's no miscommunications in the Bible. There's no contradictions in the Bible. It's just the lack of your understanding of the culture of how the people in the Bible wrote things. Right? Any other questions? Any questions? Yes, sis.
I just wanted to say that the person who I was telling you about, she would have died if she had a soul.
She probably would. And hopefully she passed along too. One less oppressor on this earth. You know what I'm saying? Any questions in the room about what we talked about today? Stubborn enough? No? T? Brandon? Anything? All right, so listen, with that, I'm Priest and Officer Shagapan of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, in 1969, teaching this truth under Commanding General Yohanan. And today has been the ISUPK history class for the entire nation, whether you're in California or in Texas or in Utah, Nevada, or Florida. Every Monday we teach the history class for Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. All right? And with that, shalom.